Hello, everyone. Welcome to the newest episode of On the Couch with the Dogs Board, in the first episode of 2025. Today, we have another special guest, as always. Today, we have a very, very intelligent young woman here who she's actually in medical school, and she is soon to become an actual practicing doctor. Her name is Miss Charmaine Chavis, but I will let her introduce herself the way she would like to.
Hi, I'm Sharmaine. Like you said, I'm in medical school. I'm in my third year of medical school. And I'm in my rotations now, so everything's going good.
So, what interested you into becoming a doctor and by factor to go into medical school?
well, I've always been like interested in science, like since elementary school. And then it sort of became like medicine is a branch of science, but it just deals with people, and so I really like the people aspect of medicine. And there's just like so much you can do with medicine while also being able to take care of people. So that's kind of what specifically drew me to going into medicine.
That is excellent. And once you decided to finally, let's say, pin that down, how did your family react to that news that that's what you want to do with your life?
Oh, I mean, like they love it. They're super, super supportive. I kind of like wanted to go into medicine since like high school. Um, and so they've always been supportive. I mean, to my mom, I've been a doctor for like, you know, I had like 10 years at least now. I'm just like, no, ma'am.
It's always nice to have supportive family, and I'm glad that you got that support. What has been some of your, I would say, especially as a Black woman, what has been some of your struggles with going into the medical field?
Well, for one, I think more difficult would be the fact that I'm a like first generation college student. I feel like a lot of my classmates are people that come from long lines of doctors. I think the majority of my classmates have doctors as parents or like a sibling or an aunt or an uncle, so they kind of have had help going through the medical system, versus like I'm learning all about this as I do it all by myself. um so that's really hard. Definitely I think being in the room with uh doctors, I'm gonna be like the only black girl in a room for the majority of the time, especially where I'm going to school. I'm in Missouri. And you would think that like in St. Louis there would be a more diverse population, but it's actually pretty segregated out here. So the hospital system that I'm in, there's like it's less diverse the workforce. Um so sometimes it can be a little bit like where you notice that you're like the only person in the room of color. But other than that, I don't think it was too difficult. I mean, my school specifically, their mission is to get more diversity in the medical field because they know that there's a lack thereof. Um, so that's really nice. My classmates are pretty diverse, but like the actual workforce is not.
Thank you for educating us about that. So, so far, Charmaine, if you don't mind me asking Dr. Chavez, the future Dr. Chavez, what has been your educational history so far? Let's say from high school graduation to now, like what have been your degrees and your certifications and things of the like? Because I know people would love to hear how accomplished you are when it comes to that.
So I did my associate's degree at FSCJ. And then after I finished my associates, I went to a bigger university to finish my bachelor's degree. I got a bachelor's in biology with a minor in psychology. And then see, but I graduated in December of 2019. So we all know what happened the next year in 2020. But so since I graduated in December, I was like, okay, I'm going to, try to apply to med school. I think I'm gonna, take a break, and then I went to get a job just to have like a part-time job in February of 2020 and at a hospital. It was like a rehabilitation hospital in Jacksonville, Brooks Rehab, and I was just doing like inpatient scheduling, which is great. I loved it. However, like literally by the end of the month of the first time I was there, it like, lockdown happened. So then I ended up just staying working there because it wasn't really feasible to go to school. I did plan on getting a master's degree, and I got accepted into North Carolina State for a master's degree in physiology. But because of the lockdown, I was like, so how are classes gonna be? How are we gonna be able to, do anything if we can't, be in school? And the guy was like, oh, we're working things out. And I was like, that's not really like I don't want to like pack up my life and move to another state and not have like a clear idea of what's going to go on. So I just stayed working at Brooks until 2021, and then I applied for another master's degree. And so then I got a master's degree in medical sciences at Jacksonville University. Um, and then after finishing my master's degree, I got into med school here in Missouri, and I started med school in 2023. So it's been a lot. I mean, like, time kind of moves on. I feel like I'm older, so it's like less traditional students, and some of my classmates, they like went and got their bachelor's degree and then went straight into med school, but I kind of had like a little detour. But like, things happen. It's fine. I like where I'm at.
That is excellent. And I thought that story sounds very inspiring for other young black women who want to do the same thing, and young black men as well. But that actually leads me to the next question. What has been, since you've started medical school in Missouri, what has been some of the, let's say, obstacles that you've had to go through, if any?
I think mostly it's just being away from family. I mean, I was very lucky to have Trevor move with me. We're engaged now, so he's my fiance now. But luckily, Trevor moved with me because I think I would have been really, really lonely here without him. Um, but I don't know. I've had a lot of support from afar, regardless. And like I said, like my school in particular is really big on diversity. So I think we're all kind of going through it together. I have like really great role models that I have as professors. Like one in particular is like Dr. Blackman. Um, she is a black woman, and I love her. She's super supportive. Um, and then I also, I go to like counseling because mental health is important. Even if you think it's like something trivial, like I'm stressed about taking a test, that's still something stressful. And so, pretty thankful. Like the counselors are both, or one of them is mixed, he's half black, and then the other one is black. And so, like, I don't know, it's like very, very supportive and great. So, even if it's a little bit lonely at times, it's not so bad, I don't think. The hardest part really is just being in school. Like that takes up so much of your time, even when you're not in school. Like the amount of time that you spend studying outside of school, like that's probably the most difficult part.
The fact that you can have any type of support, even from people who you just met, really can help. A lot of people, like you said, don't understand how important your mental health is to doing anything in life, especially with you in the medical field. I would want for any type of doctor for their mental health to be copacetic, essentially. That is very good. Now, culturally, how would you compare the educational system in Missouri to the educational system in Florida?
So one thing I thought that was strange in St. Louis is people when when they get to know other people, I guess one of the big questions they ask is, where did you go to high school? Like, not even like, where did you go to college? They don't care where you went to college. They care about where you went to high school because they're really classist out here. So telling somebody where you went to high school pretty much tells them all they need to know about what kind of upbringing you had. And so they'll be I don't even know the names of the high school out here, but like they'll be like, "Oh, I went to such and such high school," and they'll be like, "Oh, wow, you were really rich. You lived in this area and you probably had money." Versus like, "Oh, you went to that high school. Oh, so you kind of grew up kind of poor." Um, and like that just tells people all they need to know to make a quick judgment on you. But like if you're not from Missouri, uh, they don't know what you're talking about if you're like high school. Why did you ask me what high school I went to? Like I didn't even go here. I didn't live here. Uh, I think it's sort of like any place though, they have the more well-off areas that spend a lot of money on their students, and then they have the less well-to-do areas. And I think that in comparison to Jacksonville though, like the gap between the well-to-do places versus the um the other schools are very, like, the gap is huge. Like if you live on the north side, I mean, another thing that they say in St. Louis is like, don't go north of Delmar. There's a street called Delmar, and if you go north of it, that's kind of like the ghetto, pretty much. They're like, don't go north of Del Mar. There's nothing for you out there, and you can literally see it on a map. Like if you look at a map of St. Louis at night, the amount of light that radiates out of the north versus anywhere else is so like little because they don't put any funding into those areas, and they fall into disarray. And unfortunately, like the north side is predominantly black, if not almost entirely black. Um, like my school, we do a lot of like community outreach, and so I've done uh like food banks out there, and I've done like where we do free health screenings in those areas, and it is predominantly black, and it's just sad because they just don't put any effort into making these areas nicer. Even on the news, like that, if you saw the news about the tornado that came through, and they're like, "Oh, pray for St. Louis, pray for St. Louis, a tornado destroyed these many homes." The homes were on the north side, and I know y'all didn't care about it until it became a national thing. And then now you want some sympathy, but you didn't care about it in the first place. So like, I don't know, make it make sense. That's what I've seen about St. Louis.
Well, you know what? Funny, because even though that's a completely different part of the country, that's synonymous with pretty much everywhere, and not just the country, but the world. Wherever there's black people, there's a lower portion of, let's say, government funding being pumped into it.
Mm-hmm.
But we are expected to still operate at the same level as everyone else. Now, let's go to another, I would say, branch. If you could, how would you describe a regular day of classes for you?
I guess it depends. So like now that I'm in third year, that's when we're doing our clinicals, third and fourth year. So the way that med school is set up is your first 2 years, those are called your pre-clerkship years, and you are pretty much like in the classroom, like taking so many classes. For example, like undergrad, I think full time when you're doing your undergrad is considered 12 credit hours, and that might be like 3, 4 classes, depending on what kind of classes you're taking. Versus like in med school, we're taking 25 credit hours a semester. So like like double, if not more, than what an undergrad student is taking. And so it's usually like you have 1 or 2 classes a day. Um, and I don't know, you could be in class from like 9 in the morning until 5. Like so sometimes it's like a full day's work at the at the school, and then you have to go home and you still have to learn stuff from your lectures, because the amount of information that you need to know is, it's not feasible for them to teach it in the class. So the idea is, it's called like a flipped classroom. I guess a lot of schools do it, where you go home, you watch your lectures, and that might be like, I don't know, like sometimes like 4 hours of lecture, and then you're expected to be able to go to the class the next day and talk about all the stuff that you've learned in the lecture. Um, so I'm so thankful to be past my pre-clerkship. Oh my gosh. Because just like you have like no time for a life. And then you have like exams every other week or every week depending on like your year. The amount of time that you have to spend doing stuff for school is it's pretty much your whole life. Like if you, and then you also have to like feed yourself and like clean your house, and if you want to have like any sort of socializing, you know, or just like going out, it's so small, but you find the time, you make it work. But now I'm in my clerkship years. So right now, for example, I'm on my psychiatry rotation. So you do, like, when you're doing your rotations, you're either doing like a 4 week rotation or an 8 week rotation, and it just depends on which rotation. So, like, for example, surgery is an 8 week rotation. Um, but I'm on a 4 week rotation. I'm on psychiatry. And before this one, I was in family medicine. And it's just so that you can kind of get a taste of all of the different specialties, or the like the major specialties in the hospital, so that, like, you can decide where do you want to uh what do you want to do when you're actually a doctor. So like when you're applying to residency, you're like, oh, I really loved surgery. I want to be a surgeon. I got to see what it was like to be a surgeon for 8 weeks, and now I'm going to put in my application for residency for surgery. So, uh, on psychiatry, I just did inpatient psychiatry. So I would get there at like 8, and then we would see our patients. Some, like, the doctors all kind of have their own style of how they want you to see patients. Some doctors want you to just like come with them, watch them, what they do, and like that's your whole day, and you just see all the patients with the doctor, and then when you're done seeing the patients, they're like, bye. Versus some doctors are like, here's your patients. You might get like one or two patients, and then you're just gonna go in and you're gonna see the patient like they were your patient. Um, and you're not responsible for giving them medications. You can give like suggestions or anything that you don't want to tell people things that you don't know. So if you don't know something, be like, I'm not really that knowledgeable on that topic, but I will definitely bring this to the attending that's working with you. And then you go to your attending after you've seen whatever patients, and you just tell them, about the patient. Usually it's in like the SOAP note format, which is like subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. And so the subjective is stuff that the patient has told you, that you gathered from them. Objective is like if you did a physical exam or any physical findings, um, or any like labs that they did, any x-rays, any imaging. That's the objective that you found. And then assessment is you take all that information and you're like, based off of what this patient has told me and what their labs and all the other objective findings are, this patient has this problem. And then you give like some differentials, like they could also have this, this, and this is why I think they have this, this, and this. And then a plan is what you think would be best for the patient, because that's what you have to do when you're a doctor. So they just want you to start practice doing all those things. So that's kind of my day, is either following a doctor around or getting to see my own patients and then going to the doctor and telling them all the stuff.
Thank you for that information. You definitely educated me on a lot of things concerning what a medical student would usually have to go through. With that being said, what has been, our, let's say, a particular experience so far in medical school that you say, let's say it comes to mind every now and again?
I mean, even in like first and second year, they want you to get some exposure to talking to patients, so that way, like, because there's more to being a great doctor than just knowing all the information. I mean, like, yeah, that's you have to know all the information, but like, can you actually like talk to a patient and figure out and gather information? And so I think about um when we're taught like different types of uh disorders and pathologies, and based on the findings, you kind of have to like put a puzzle piece together, right? So there was um an older lady I remember shadowing, a doctor, and one of her patients was older, and she was like, my stomach hurts. And so, you hear my stomach hurts and you're thinking like, okay, well, she could have like gastritis, she could have heartburn, like she could have an ulcer. You start like thinking about all these things based off like the first thing that they tell you. But then, objectively, it's like, oh, could you tell me where your pain is? And she, instead of pointing to where your stomach would be found, which is like, you know, upper left quadrant area of your stomach, she points to like the lower left quadrant, which then changes all of your thought processes. You're like, she's not pointing to her stomach at all. She's pointing to her her colon. So then you have to start thinking like, oh, this is actually like, it could be like diverticulitis, it could be, just constipation, blah blah blah. So it's just like, it was fun in a way to see like the way that the patient population like speaks in layman's terms versus like what you're taught can be like two separate things. So you have to just like hear what they're saying, but gather more information, because you can't just like hear the first thing and be like, that's it. So that was like that's something I think about and I tell people about. Um, and then I guess most recently is like seeing the way that pathologies are presented in class versus actually getting to see what those pathologies look like in person is a way different experience. Like, learning about psychiatry in a textbook and being like, oh yeah, this patient's got mania, and mania symptoms are, X, Y, and Z, but then getting to see an actual like patient in a full-blown manic episode, it's wild.
That's eye-opening in different ways. How many more years would you say, Charmaine, Dr. Chavis, until you have your MD?
But I'm on my third year, and then I would have one more year after I complete this year. So, and then after that,
Excellent.
applied. Well, I guess I wouldn't say after that. In your fourth year, you apply for your residencies, and then hopefully you get matched and you go into a residency, and then your residency, depending on what you go into, determines how many years more you're going to do. Although you are getting paid when you're a resident, which is like what people look forward to, because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm actually making some money, even though it's, much less than what you actually make when you're like a full blown attending. So like, if you were to tell people like, oh, I'm a doctor, they'll be like, oh, you're rich. It's like, no, I'm a resident doctor. I am not rich at all. But yeah, so like, say if you wanted to do like family medicine or internal medicine, usually those are going to be like 3-year residencies. But if you want to do something like, surgery, that can go like 10 years. So it just depends.
Wow. That's new information. Again, thank you for that, Dr. Chavis. Hopefully, by the time you get your MD, we will be able to do an interview like this again.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yes,
We'll have so
ma'am.
much more
Yes.
knowledge to share.
Yes, ma'am. Wait, and I know we will be excited to hear it. But now that we're going towards the closing, did you have anything that you would like to ask us, ask the viewers, or say to us, or to say to the viewers slash listeners?
I think I would say like some advice that has helped me get through school is coming from like personal experience, is like, you gotta trust yourself. You gotta know if you're putting in the effort, that things will work out. You gotta be confident. I think that's like something that's served me very well, is that I have a lot of internal confidence, which, you know, uh I think has served me well. Like, just knowing that I've put in the effort and that I'm making it through is something really important. You got to believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself and you don't do anything at all, well, like, if you don't try, you won't ever succeed. So that's what I gotta say. I think you there's nowadays you can go online and find anything. Also, like, when I was applying to med school, I had to like rely on you know academic advisors who didn't really know too much or didn't give me the best information. But now you can look up anything, really. And also take Reddit with a grain of salt. If I think a lot of people are either like they're either super high up, and I applaud those people, like they're like super intelligent, never failed anything, and they're gonna be successful. And then there's also like the woe is me crowd, and you kind of gotta take a grain of salt. Somewhere in the middle is probably where most people are at. So those are my things of advice. Be confident, know what you're doing. The information is there at your fingertips if you need it. Although I would say, be wary of AI. No offense. Like, if you look up a disorder, it's going to pull from all of the things, and it might not give you the right information. And then take other people's anecdotes with a grain of salt. That's all I got.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Chavis. I appreciate you for coming on the show. Like I said, you gave a completely new perspective and different viewpoints that people who haven't gone to medical school have even thought about. So I'm happy that people, including myself, have been able to learn and to inquire about things like that. But if that would be all, again, thank you everyone for listening. So as always, this is going to be on streaming and download platforms first. And then soon after that, it is going to be posted on YouTube. After that, the visual version is going to be posted on YouTube. People, you can see either or. You will have options like always. It's an honor for this to be the first interview that we've done of this year. But again, thank you everyone for listening. Doc and Dr. Chavez signing out.
Bye.